Hello and welcome to episode number 8 of Heart Containers, a daily podcast where we discuss the latest Nintendo news every Monday through Friday. I'm your host, Rami Fawaz, and today is Wednesday, February 6th. I hope you guys all had a good Tuesday. For me, it was a little bit rough there. I actually got a little sick. I had to take some time off of work and catch up on some sleep, but thankfully, now that we're getting to the tail end of that whatever it was that taken me over, I'm starting to feel better, so that's good. I hope you guys had a better Tuesday than I did. But on the plus side, there's a lot to talk about when it comes to Nintendo related content. Some games are being updated and others are making their way onto Nintendo Switch in 2019 that were maybe unexpected, and that's what we're going to get into today in the daily Nintendo report.
Well, the wait is over. This is Nintendo DS. My body is ready.
We would like to play.
A way to make 3D games a reality. And it's called the Wii U Game Pen.
The first story on the report is more of an announcement than a story, but it's still worth talking about. Nintendo has revealed this month's additions to the NES library for Nintendo Switch Online. For the non-Japan regions, February will bring both Super Mario Bros. 2 and Kirby's Adventure. So if you're still in the ecosystem and you're still playing and paying actually for Nintendo Switch Online, you will get those two games at some point in February. What's really interesting to me is that they're sticking with this two-game approach. The first time that they did this was last month, where they revealed two games, again, coming to the Western regions. And before that, every single month came with three games. So it's a bit of a question about, was it just kind of like a one-off thing? And now that they've announced February's games, it doesn't seem to be that way. It seems like this might be how they're moving forward in the future. And that's kind of concerning, if you ask me. It was already a bit of a stretch to say that being able to play NES games with the Nintendo Switch Online subscription was a substantial enough benefit to make it worth it. I mean, there's no doubt that playing these NES games on the Switch with the wireless controllers, if you did shell out the extra $60 or something to get those controllers, is probably my favorite way to play those games. It is the most convenient way to play NES games, especially with the Switch's adaptability. Being able to play it on the go or on the big screen with those controllers is definitely my favorite way to play NES games. But still, there's always been a question in almost everyone's minds about, is it worth it though? Especially when you look at what their competitors are doing and what Nintendo is capable of doing with their virtual console lineup that just has not made its way onto the Nintendo Switch. So it's surprising to me that they are willing to dip lower than 3 and go with 2 for a service that's already kind of questionable about whether or not it's worth the price. But if either of those games are interesting to you, Super Mario Bros. 2, I remember playing that game specifically on my Game Boy Advance. It's the one that's a bit quirkier and has Birdo in it, so that's always a fun one. Kirby's Adventure is actually a game I've never played. I'm probably going to check it out. I've been meaning to go check out the Nintendo Switch Online NES library just because ever since they announced Dr. Mario World, I've been having that itch to go and play Dr. Mario, which I'm pretty sure is on there. So those are your February games for Nintendo Switch Online. The second story on the report is also somewhat related to Nintendo Switch Online, but in a different way. Vivox, I'm going to call them Vivox, a managed communications services company, has decided to help solve the Switch's cumbersome voice chat communication problem. Mainly, the fact that Nintendo decided against natively supporting party chat, even though the console itself has the capability of doing that. And instead, Nintendo went with that mobile app approach instead. So this guy named Jason Wilson from VentureBeat broke the news yesterday by saying, Vivox announced today that it's releasing a software development kit SDK to add text and voice chat to Nintendo Switch games. This will enable third-party developers to use this tech for their multiplayer games, which is helpful because Nintendo's own online architecture doesn't include online voice chat. Epic Games' Fortnite is one of the number of games that use Vivox on Switch for multiplayer chat, and this tech also offers cross-platform play support where you play on one platform against those on another. So that's what he reported on, and it's also worth noting that after this news broke, we got more announcements about games that were going to take advantage of this software development kit that Vivox is now allowing third parties to utilize. And the two games that are most notable that announced this yesterday were Paladins and Smite. So Paladins and Smite are going to get the Fortnite treatment by being able to you will be able to use voice chat on the console itself, and you won't have to use your phone to open Discord or even use the actual Nintendo Switch app itself to talk to your friends. This, I mean, I'm not really sure what to think about this. I originally believed, like many of you guys, I'm sure, that when Nintendo first announced that they were going to go the app route, that they just did not support this capability in the hardware, that you just could not possibly use voice chat or transfer voice chat through the console while you played the game. And I will admit that I was a bit naive about how I thought about it. I really didn't know if it was truly a technical problem. I felt like it could have been, and maybe this was Nintendo's somewhat clever solution to getting around it. But clearly, it's not a technical problem whatsoever. That Fortnite has solved it already, and when you play Fortnite, I believe you don't even need Nintendo Switch Online to play Fortnite. So Fortnite is kind of just blazing its own rules across any platform that it's on. So it's actually kind of incredible to see every kind of shortcut that they take across all of its platforms and how its platforms are kind of bending to its will. You know, we heard about the PS4 controversy and how Sony kind of allowed crossplay or allowed cross account communication or connection with Fortnite after they kind of pushed back on Sony. And now we're seeing a little bit of that with Nintendo, not nearly to the same extent. And it's not, you know, apples to apples. It's kind of apples to oranges here. But still, Fortnite was the sole game that I know of. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but I'm pretty sure Fortnite was the sole game that was saying, hey, we're not going to use your external, you know, phone app for communication. We're just going to brute force it, and we're going to allow our player base to use the Switch itself to talk to each other. And now all of a sudden, the SDK, the company that was behind Fortnite's ability to do so, is opening the floodgates, and all of a sudden it's not going to be so surprising to see a handful, if not more, of Switch games using the voice chat on the Switch itself, with Nintendo themselves not being a publisher taking advantage of that, or at least it doesn't sound like they would because they already have the app. I wonder what that really means for all of this. Like, did Nintendo release this app truly thinking that this was the future? That the app was actually a benefit, like a big feature for the Switch? And then ever since they did that, they're kind of pulling back now and regretting it. Like, I wonder if that is, and if that's what ended up happening, because I would have thought that Nintendo would have pushed the app so much harder by now. But when you go on the Nintendo Switch app on your phone, it's still essentially a Splatoon 2 results reader. And it's been nearly like we're about to enter the third year of the Switch, and that's pretty embarrassing when you think about it. So my take on this is that maybe Nintendo is preparing. I wouldn't say that they're preparing, but maybe they are being a lot more relaxed with how third parties and external companies utilize the hardware of the Switch, especially when it comes to communication, because they thought that the app was going to be a lot more successful than it was, and they themselves have abandoned that way of utilizing, you know, party communication or voice chat with your friends on your friends list. So I don't know what the end game for all of this is. I would hope that this points to a brighter future for not only these third parties. I mean, it's great that Paladins and Smite and hopefully other third parties are going to be able to use Vivox's tool set in order to improve the voice chat for their games. But I hope that because Nintendo is starting to get really serious about Nintendo Switch Online in general, and they really want the subscriptions to keep on coming, and they've already mentioned how Splatoon 2 and Super Smash Bros. Ultimate are two very important games for why they even have the subscriptions continuing, that maybe they take a second look at what Vivox is doing here, and they themselves decide to either support it by just turning on the Switch or doing whatever it is that Vivox is doing to have their own games utilize the voice chat capabilities of the Switch or providing an SDK in their own. I want to see Nintendo kind of open it up and say, hey, you have to look right now externally to figure out how to get voice chat working on the Switch. Don't worry about it. Here are the tools. We're going to make it easy for you. The third story on the list has to do with Respawn Entertainment, the development studio known for the Titanfall series. They have recently revealed and launched their very own free-to-play FPS battle royale game earlier this week titled Apex Legends. So far, the game seems to be starting off on the right foot, with the game being one of the most, if not the most popular titles being played on Twitch, depending on when you check. And Respawn themselves is reporting that Apex Legends broke 1 million unique players in just 8 hours after launch. Of course, the natural thought process for us Nintendo fans is to ask whether or not the studio has any plans to bring this Battle Royale title onto Nintendo Switch, seeing as right now it is only available on PC, PS4, and Xbox One. The lead producer of the game, Drew McCoy, told Eurogamer that Respawn would love to bring Apex Legends to Switch, but there's, quote, nothing they can currently talk about, quote, at this time. So I wanted to mention along with this news that it was sort of tangential, but will go very nicely with the story, that Nintendo just released or revealed the top 30 most downloaded Switch games in North America for January, so last month, and Fortnite was at the very top of the list. And why that's significant, if you didn't connect the dots, is that Fortnite is, of course, a battle royale game. It is the biggest battle royale game there is out there, on top of being probably the biggest game out there, at least the most talked about game these days. It makes the most money. Everyone's talking about it. It is enormous, and it's no surprise that it is at the very top of the Nintendo Switch's most downloaded games in January. But I wanted to mention that because it is a similar style game to Respawn's own Apex Legends. Fortnite is also a free-to-play, it's not an FPS, but it is a battle royale game that has a lot of attention on it. And you would be remiss to assume that Respawn isn't at least looking at the success of some of these vaguely similar titles like Fortnite and even Paladins, like the games that we mentioned earlier to an extent, because they seem to be doing really well on the Switch. And that's why I'm sure that the lead producer, Drew McCoy, his comments about loving this idea of bringing it to the Switch, but not sure if they can really commit or talk about it, makes sense to me, because the Switch has so much potential. It is doing so many things right with games that are very similar to this. It just has a big question mark on whether or not it can handle it technically. But they didn't outright deny it. So to me, that says that they are leaving the door open in the case that it might be incredibly difficult to port, but not impossible. So they have to make sure that it is worth it. Or maybe what they're saying here is they are just so dedicated to getting Apex Legends off, starting off on the right foot. I mean, they are having a killer of a launch, right? With, what was it? 1 million unique players in just 8 hours. I mean, that's insane. Congratulations to them. But I can see them wanting to focus on what their core, initial safe fan base might be, which would be the standard PC, PS4, Xbox One, because you can get the technical specs basically all the same across all those consoles and not worry too much about things like portability and, porting downward onto the Switch. But if this game continues to take off, if Apex Legends continues to be a battle royale game that maybe takes some of Fortnite's market share, then I can totally see Respawn biting in and saying, hey, we want it to be on Switch and other devices, because why wouldn't they? Fortnite and PUBG are games that are not only huge on Switch, although PUBG's not on Switch, but they're huge across multiple devices, including mobile. So I think that's a natural progression for Apex Legends if it continues to be as big as it seems like it could be. So keep an eye open for what Respawn might do with the Switch in the future. That would be really cool, because that development studio has never made anything for Nintendo consoles, albeit it's a very new development studio, relatively speaking. They've only made, Titanfall 1, Titanfall 2, and now Apex Legends. So they've only ever made 3 games, and one of them was an Xbox One exclusive, the original Titanfall. So there weren't that many opportunities to come to a Nintendo console, but this might be the first one that breaks through. And the last story on the report Emily Rogers, a games writer and avid Nintendo leaker or rumor maker, however you want to title that, made headlines yesterday when she stated that there could be anywhere between 8 to 11 completely unannounced Nintendo published games scheduled to release in 2019. As a leaker, Emily has had both hits and misses. Her notable misses relating to a handful of games that were supposed to come out to the Wii U, but they never did. And more recently, she's been fairly accurate about the Switch era. She correctly identified many key aspects about the Switch itself before the console was even announced, and she also broke the news on the Pokemon Let's Go game. So she definitely has some credibility that can't completely be brushed aside. We should not just look at what she's saying here as nonsense because she's been wrong about a couple of things in the past, because she's also been very right about other things and things that are very recent, So in this generation thus far, she's done a very good job. That's why I'm bringing you guys this news in the first place, because I think she has some credibility. Now, when we dig deeper into her comments, she considers she considers 8 of these titles, of these unannounced titles, to have at least a 70% chance, so 70% chance or more of arriving in 2018. And she further broke it down for us. She said that 4 of those 8 are complete mysteries. We don't know what they are. They could be anything, but again, these are Nintendo published games, not necessarily Nintendo developed games, published games. So a good example of that is the new Marvel, what's it called? The Black Order game. The Marvel game that was announced during the Ultimate Alliance. Man, why did that slip my mind? The new Marvel Ultimate Alliance game that was announced during the Video Game Awards, that is being published by Nintendo. So when she says Nintendo published, that's what they mean. That's what it could mean. So 4 out of those 8 are complete mystery. 2 are eShop only titles, so download only titles. 1 is a mysterious Wii U port, which she oddly specified was released in 2013. So it was a Wii U port that had to come out in the year of 2013. So that actually narrows it down quite a bit, actually. And then lastly is a new Labo kit. So those 8 that I just mentioned have a very high chance of arriving in 2019. And the last 3, because again, she said 8 to 11. The last 3, Emily considers them to be wild cards with a 50% chance or less of arriving in 2019, and those 3 being Retro Studios' secret project that we don't know about, that I think I mentioned yesterday as potentially being that Star Fox Grand Prix game, although again, that was never officially confirmed. The next one being Metroid Prime Trilogy, which has had its fair share of rumors as well, but again, also has never been confirmed. And the last one is yet another mysterious Wii U port, although this one does not have any restrictions about like it being from 2013, although you have to admit, how many Wii U games are there left really to port? I mean, there weren't that many Wii U games total. So there is a whole lot going on here, and it would be kind of silly, I think, to go through every single one and try to think about what they could be. And it's quite interesting, though. What she's saying about some of them make a whole lot of sense. For instance, this new Labo kit, yes, that was something that maybe I wasn't thinking about, because Labo kind of like comes and goes in my conscious, but it makes a lot of sense that new Labo kits would be coming in 2019. More Wii U ports. I'm not sure. So let's break down the 2013 one. I actually went and wrote down some of the games that came out in 2013 for the Wii U, and those included Super Mario 3D World, Pikmin 3, Wii Fit U, Wii Sports Club, and The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker HD. I could see it being any of those games, and I think any of them, well, I guess maybe not Wii Fit U, because they just kind of did fitness boxing, and that kind of steps on each other's toes. Wii Sports Club is actually a very interesting game, because I know that a lot of people have been asking for the Switch's version of Wii Sports, a lighthearted, family-friendly type of come together and play video game sport style things. So that might be an interesting take on it. But of course, there are some killer titles on there that I haven't yet dove into, like Super Mario 3D World. Man, that would be a great port to bring over, as well as The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker HD. The other games, I mean, the eShop download only titles, don't know what they could be, not even going to try to guess. The other 4 mysterious games, again, they can be anything at all. I would only wager that maybe 1 or 2 are actually Nintendo developed, because Nintendo already has a stacked 2019 with, Luigi's Mansion, Fire Emblem, Pokemon, Animal Crossing, that it would be really hard for me to imagine that they have 4 more that they're developing that are that are going to just surprise people in 2019, especially after the news that we heard yesterday. 4 is too many. I expect more of them to be the same style as Marvel Ultimate Alliance or Damien X Machina or Machine, whatever that one's called. Just being published instead of being developed. The last 3 are actually really interesting to me because I talked about these recently in some couple of shows, and I feel like they should have more than a 50% chance of arriving in 2019. Metroid Prime Trilogy, from what we've heard about the rumors, claim that game is completely done. So if that has a 50% chance or less about arriving in 2019, that must mean that they have it and they are holding off with it for some weird reason. Maybe the delay of Metroid Prime 4 has pushed their marketing plan so far back for that game that they want to make sure that Metroid Prime Trilogy, for some reason, releases close enough to Metroid Prime 4 to help them out in some way. Maybe they believe that releasing the Prime Trilogy closer to Metroid Prime 4 as opposed to be like releasing now is going to help Prime 4 and Metroid in general just sell better. That's one of the only reasons why I can see Nintendo taking a game that is pretty much complete and it only having a 50% chance of releasing this year. Retro Studios' secret game, again, only 50%. That's weird to me because it's been in development for so long. Like, it should be coming out in 2019, especially if they're taking on the added work to work on Metroid Prime 4. I don't see why they can't get that game out in I don't think that they would be working side by side between the two. It's just weird. Like, Metroid Prime 4, the delay for that game has had a pretty decent impact, I guess, on these games that could be coming out in 2019, more so than the game itself. And then the last Wii U port, well, I mean, that could be anything, but that's actually going to bring us to the end of the report and into our question of the day. So, the official question for Wednesday, February 6th is, assuming these rumors are true, what Wii U era game would you like to see brought over to the Switch in 2019? So, I'm specifically referring to the one that isn't necessarily tied to the 2013 moniker that Emily is talking about. Although, feel free to pick a 2013 game if that's the one that you would like to see the most. I wrote down a handful of them that I mentioned some of them earlier, but I wrote down other ones that didn't only come out in 2013 just so I can get a holistic view of it. And I was actually really surprised when looking at games for this because there aren't that many. There aren't that many left. There's every single game that's coming for the Wii U. I mean, well, either A, it's been restricted by the fact that the Wii U just didn't have a lot of games. B, sequels have already come out, so it doesn't make a lot of sense for those games to come over. Like, it would be crazy for me if they took like Splatoon 1 and re-released it, because Splatoon 2 is so similar to Splatoon 1, and I would just rather them do Splatoon 3. Same thing goes for like Smash Brothers. That doesn't make any sense. And then lastly, they've probably already ported it over because the Switch already has so many Wii U ports. So here's the list that I made: Mario Maker, Wind Waker HD, Twilight Princess HD, Xenoblade Chronicles X, Pikmin 3, The Wonderful 101, Tokyo Mirage Sessions Sharp FE, and also any of them that I mentioned earlier but did not mention here. So that's Super Mario 3D World, Wii Fit U, Wii Sports Club. Those, I think, are all of the ones that I think have the highest likelihood of coming. Now, what is the most likely? So not necessarily the one that I think I would want, but the one that has the highest likelihood of making its way over. I would think either of the Mario games. Seeing as how successful Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe has been thus far, that even though the hype and the initial sales for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate has been over these past couple months now, that even in that situation, U Deluxe continues to smash. It continues to smash. It continues to do very well in terms of sales. So I think Mario is a no-brainer, considering especially how well it's doing right now for U Deluxe. Mario Maker would make so much sense and would make me very happy. But then you have 3D World, which has the multiplayer aspect in it, and I think that works super well for the Switch. So if I'm going to pick the one that's the most likely, those are either one or the other, and Super Mario 3D World has the benefit of coming out again in 2013, which would fit one of those Wii U rumors. Now, if I'm going to pick the one that I want the most, I think I would rather have a Wind Waker Twilight Princess combo. Yeah, maybe that's an unfair choice, but I don't care. I'm going to go with it. I want to see Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. Both of those games have, developer resources poured into them to upgrade them to HD, ported on the Wii U on a console that really deserved more users playing it, and thus those games deserved more people playing those as well. And I don't want to see all that work put to waste. Put it on the Switch where they'll have millions and millions of more people playing those games. It actually goes into a lot of what they talked about with Skyward Sword recently, because there have been some rumblings and rumors about that game being re-released in an HD setting. And although I have my opinions about Skyward Sword, I would absolutely love it if they decided to say, hey, we're going to take Wind Waker, we're going to take Twilight Princess, and then we're going to take Skyward Sword, and we're going to release this HD collection for the Switch. That would be such a good value, and also a great way to preserve Zelda history on modern devices, especially because we don't know anything about the future of the Virtual Console. I think a wildcard pick that I don't think they would pick, but I would actually like to see, is Tokyo Mirage Sessions Sharp FE, especially if they don't release Persona 5 on the Switch, which I definitely think they will. But if they don't, Tokyo Mirage Sessions is a great choice. It's a Shin Megami Tensei style game. It's a game that also did not get nearly enough attention that it probably should have, but it is one that could use new life on the platform and is different enough from the Xenoblade Chronicles that it could offer that JRPG style game without necessarily encroaching on other people's territory. And that's all I had to talk about for today's episode. I want to hear, though, what you think about the question of the day, which is, again, assuming the rumors are true, what Wii U era game would you like to see brought over to the Switch in 2019? And if you want to let me know what you think about that question, you can reach out to me in 3 ways. You can email me at heartcontainerspodcast@gmail.com. You can follow the official Heart Containers Twitter at HCNintendo, or talk to me personally at Rome Fawaz on Twitter. This has been Heart Containers episode number 8 for Wednesday, February 6th. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see y'all real soon.